Hello everybody, my name is Daniel. I talk about Essendon. I wanted to talk about a little bit of the latest Bomber news that I thought was worthy of discussion. The first thing I wanted to have a bit of a look at was some of the things that Archie Roberts said in regards to the new training processes that are going on at Essendon, specifically in regards to Matthew INNES. It's an article from the AFL website. I'm just going to bring it up now. You can just have a look at the article. Bombers ace gives insight into grueling fitness overhaul. Essendon's new fitness department has targeted having the Bombers primed to perform when games are at their toughest. Freshly installed fitness boss Matthew INNES has made an immediate impact at Tullamarine since Essendon players arrived back for pre-season training in November. After years of lengthy injury lists and underperforming, Essendon is a bit desperate to have more players available and stay competitive for longer in seasons. So one thing that's frustrated me in regards to the fitness program at Essendon for probably a decade and a half, and I think this started in about 2011. It started in, I think it probably would have been James Hird's first season as coach in 2011, where we had an alarming drop-off in the second half of the season almost every year. All right, almost every year. You can look at and I don't know what it was about that year in particular, but you have a look from 2011 onwards, we've just totally, maybe not necessarily every year, but 70 to 80% of the years over that 15-year period, we fell away. If you go back before that time, whether we were good or bad, it was tended to be a more even spread. Yeah, we might have performed poorly at the end of seasons before that just because we're a bad team, but it was a kind of a more even spread of performances. But ever since 2011, Essendon has often started seasons strongly, been well entrenched in the finals and totally fallen out, not just a little bit, but totally fallen out of contention. And it's just been driving me nuts. And I think the club, they must have identified this because it must have, it must be driving the people crazy when they see the constant fall off year after year after year after what is often, a pretty impressive start to the year. So players have been running at high intensity for 7-minute periods without water to prepare them for tough periods in matches when they can't come off the field. The new fitness team have come in with a set of structure that's new to us, and we're very excited, he said. This is Archie Roberts after completing a training session in warm weather on Wednesday. We're loving the structure of the trainings, a lot more high speed, a lot more grueling sessions. We know it's setting us up for the season in 2026. So whenever I look at things like this and whenever I hear players talk about this, I'm always trying to read between the lines and look for words or phrases, something that gives me a bit of an indication. What I like is that they're doing something different. The players notice it. The players can actually, because you don't want to just change the fitness regime, a new one comes in, it's just a different name, but they're doing the same thing. So the fact that the players actually notice a significant change in the intensity of the training, in the gruelingness of the session, the fact that the players are being primed to perform late in games, I think that's a good sign. It sounds like all the right things. And if you have a look at a lot of the vision that's been coming out of training from the club over the last couple of weeks, they look pretty good. The players that are out there look pretty good, and Archie Roberts is one of those. So he goes on to say we're focusing probably. We're focusing on probably the hardest 7 minutes of the game and just being better than anybody else at that. When the game's at its toughest, being the fastest, being the hardest working. He goes on to praise Zach Merritt and saying all the usual stuff. So, I thought this was pretty noteworthy because we've heard this from a couple of players now. We've heard this from Zach Reid praising Matthew INNES. We've heard it from Archie Roberts. And I like the sound of things being done with a higher intensity and just being done differently. We hear some stories out of training of players being instructed to move the ball on the count of 2 rather than on the count of 3. So move it quickly, go 1, 2, and then kick it, get rid of it. So it looks like we're going to be focusing on being a more resilient team in terms of being able to stand up just in matches for longer, but also over the season for longer. Goes without saying, but look, it just hasn't worked over the last decade and a half. They're the facts. We've just been a terrible team in the second half of the year. And, we're starting to hear all the right things initially out of the current fitness guy. So some of the things you do, that is Matthew Innes, of course. I forgot his name for a second. I've heard offhand a few people from West Coast, they've said when he was there that they got their best results there in year 2. I think this is probably, look, I'm not a physiologist or anything, but it probably makes sense that if you're changing things up, you're probably going to start to get more consistent results from the second and third year onwards once you've had a full pre-season of doing that. So we'll see how that goes. West Coast, I think, still had some injury problems when he was there in their first season, but then the injuries started to clear up in his second season. So hopefully we can, get some of these players on the park that have been out for long periods of time, the soft tissue injuries, but we'll see how that goes. But so far, it's all looking pretty good. The other thing I wanted to talk about was just the confirmation of Cillian Bourke. I was going to call him Cillian Murphy, one of my favourite actors. I called him Cillian in the other video that I made, but it is Cillian Bourke. There he is. Officially, this is was brought to the attention as news a few days ago, but now it has been confirmed that he is a Category B rookie. So both Category B rookie spots are filled. So we will have the 44 players on the list when you include him. Actually, it will be 45 once you include Nick Martin, who will be on the inactive list. You can't have 45, but technically he's not playing. So we'll be able to sign another player, but I'm going to get into that a little bit later in the video. So just go through what it says here about Cillian. Hailing from County Offaly in the Republic of Ireland, he makes the code switch as one of the Gaelic's most touted young prospects, even named as his county's best under-20 player last season. At 190 centimetres, Bourke's physicality and athleticism translate well to the AFL landscape. Pundits and peers in Ireland have lauded his ability to kick on both sides as a left footer and break lines with his run and carry, positioning him as a potential utility option for the Dons. So I think this is pretty exciting. Obviously, these things are a risk. Well, it's not that much of a risk. If it doesn't pay off, we kind of lose nothing. We pay it costs a bit of money, I guess. But so there's only really upside with this. And I think Essendon look at a player like this with his excellent athletic traits that could translate very well to the AFL game, being ambidextrous, having very good endurance, being they're always tough as well, the Irish players. I always want to fight everybody. I don't know if he's like that, but I think Matt Rosa see him as having a really high potential upside. And whilst there have been lots of Irish players that hasn't worked out, there have been some that have been huge success stories. And the investment that you make in them is so minimal, right? If you can turn one of them into a really, really good player. And I look at this guy and I think, imagine if he had started playing Australian rules football when he was 10, instead of now when he was 20. What could he have been? So the fact that he is, so athletic, can kick the ball on both sides of the body, will be difficult to learn those skills, of course. Kicking with the oval ball, but look, that's no different to what all the other Irish players have had to put up with and do. So he first got involved in the AFL around July last year. He was contacted to do a couple of sessions in Dublin with some of the boys who had links to Australia. He went to the grand final, I believe. He was invited to the grand final, so that would have been a good day for him. It's been great getting to know the boys, and he goes on and talks about that. Matt Rosa says it's awesome bringing Cillian aboard to kick off his career as an AFL player. From his tryouts abroad and his efforts at the Combine, Cillian really stood out to our recruiting team as someone who could transition to footy well and provide a great point of difference for us. So I think what we don't have and what they're looking for, and I've brought this up on my videos that I've been doing where I've been going through all the players on Essendon's list. One thing we really don't have is that line-breaking player. Now, I think that Matt Rose is looking at Cillian and thinking that maybe he could potentially develop into that player. That real line-breaking player that we haven't had since Adam Sard left to go to Carlton. We had kind of Nick Hine, but he wasn't quite good enough to be in the senior team most weeks. We've got a few, players that can do it a little bit, but we haven't got anyone who's really explosive. So these Irish players are really quick. They're, very athletic, and if they can adapt to the game, I think they look at him as being yet another player who could play off halfback for Essendon, but give us a bit of drive, and I think they really do see him as having, high upside. which is what he says here. Yeah, his speed, power and agility are obviously high-end traits, but his foot skills and ability to read the Gaelic game as well as he does will give him a good base to work with. So that's all very exciting. We wish him well, and I can't wait to have a bit of a look at him playing, presumably in the VFL during the year, and to see what he can give us. The last thing I wanted to talk about was just something that Callum Toomey posted on Twitter in regards to the last Essendon list spot, which will be an SSP player. Will Setterfield is expected to get the Bombers' opened list spot after Nick Martin's injury. Talks underway for a deal for 2026. So I'm glad for Will if this is the case. I really am. I wanted him to not be delisted in the first place. But why rush? You don't have to make a decision on an SSP player until around the 20th of February or sometime around there. Last year we had a number of players. We had Kane Baldwin and Tom Edwards who were competing with each other, and competition's good because it brings out the best in you, and it's sort of, may the best man win sort of thing, and it happened to be Tom Edwards. So what's the rush? Why not have a couple of players competing for that last spot? Varies, we don't need to go into all the different players that are available, but why put all your eggs in the Will Setterfield basket, especially given that his short to medium term future is a little bit uncertain with his injury, his Lisfranc injury. Now I'm assuming he'll be okay by the time the season starts. We're talking still, what is it, 4 months away or whatever. But why rush? Why commit to Will? I'm happy for him, and look, he can give us something good. He's a tough inside mid who can play a tagging role. He kind of provides a role that not many other players on our list can do. And I don't think the club wanted to get rid of him. I think this might be what's going on here. The club didn't really want to get rid of him. And it is worth saying that the situation that the club found themselves in with the huge demand for list spots due to the influx of mid-season draftees was highly unusual, having to delist 10 players. And Will was, of course, the last player to get delisted. And I'm certain that Matt Rosa and the team and Brad Scott probably didn't really want to get rid of him, but it's like fitting a square peg in a round hole. At some point, you've got to make the list spots available for the 5 people that we wanted to select in the draft. So maybe it's just that. Maybe they always wanted Will to be on the list in the first place, and they don't see this. They're not looking at it as an SSP selection, even though it is. They're just looking at it as, well, you're just going on the list like you should have always been. That's kind of maybe how the club's looking at it. And I want him on the list, I do, but I also want some competition. I want to see what some other players can offer. Everybody thought Kane Baldwin was a certainty last year to get that last spot, everybody. And then look what happened. He didn't get it. Tom Edwards came in and dominated a couple of pre-season games. So you just never know what you can find. If you open yourself up to competition, if you open yourself up to some of the potential other players that might be candidates, then you might just find someone who might even be better. You just don't know. So the way, I trust Callum Toomey. I trust his sources. When he says something, it's usually right. So if he says Will's expected to get the list spot, then I believe him and he's expected to get the list spot. But I just don't see the rush in it. But we'll see what happens there. So what do you guys think of this? Do you want to see Will Setterfield on the list, or do you want to open it up to competition and see him competing perhaps with another player like we did last year where Tom Edwards got on the list? To be interesting. So that's the latest news for the Bombers. Cillian Murphy officially joins Essendon. A bit of news from the pre-season training about how the players are adapting to and what their opinions are of Matthew INNES and how everything's going there at training. It all looks to be going pretty well. And Will Setterfield, potentially at this stage, looks like coming back onto the list as our 45th player, if you include Nick Martin into that, Nick Martin being on the inactive list and all. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And as always, go Bombers!